Perfect. So the main reason we wanted to hop on today is just, it's been crazy for you, but with the L2 and travel and everything going on. But a couple weeks ago that you had posted on social media and let people know that for a variety of reasons in your life that we're going to talk about, it was a good opportunity for you to kind of opt out of shredding season and pull the reins a little bit and say, this isn't best for me long-term. This isn't the way that I want to be dieting. And so we just really wanted to create the opportunity to educate on why you made that choice, the mindset behind it, and giving clients who might be participating in shredding season or in general are entering into a diet phase or any other nutritional protocol that increases stress for them, the opportunity to really understand how to advocate for themselves and when mindset gets to be priority. So I'm pretty candid about my opinions on shredding season. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. And on the one hand, the number one thing that I focus on whenever a client is entering into a season of their nutritional protocol is their mindset. So whenever we're doing any sort of a challenge, we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that maybe triggers some unhealthy thoughts around food, that implies the fact that if they're not winning, they're failing, that maybe sees comparison pictures. It doesn't trigger any sort of those like all or nothing thoughts or self-deprecating beliefs. And in general, that they don't need to take drastic measures to lose a bunch of weight for money. So that's why we work really hard as a company at the beginning of shredding season to make sure that we're telling people, work with a coach, do things a smart way. This is just a fun opportunity for you to enter into this phase. And why I love shredding season is I have a ton of clients who have worked really hard to earn the right to diet. They're in a great spot to do so. And so we want to create a fun, competitive environment where they get to do it with a community.
The accountability of it is really what I loved like the most.
Absolutely. And I think it actually starts to shift a mindset from I need to diet forever to, oh, cool, this is just 12 weeks. Yeah. This is a part of my plan. And then I'll have a coach to help take me out of it. So, no major negative ramifications.
Yeah.
But we can only do so many disclaimers. We can only predict so much of what's going to happen. And you're a perfect example of that because life happened and in the middle of it, you were like, nope, this is no longer a good fit for me.
Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit about why and what caused you to make that decision.
So first and foremost, going into this, obviously, so we know what's happened, we'll rewind and we'll talk about what's happened in the first 2 years, because this is our third year doing it. And year number one, I have a really bad habit of coming out of the gate hot and being I'm going to crush it. And I do it in my workouts, I do it in business, and I just do it in all aspects of my life. And, I put myself in a pretty big deficit. It was the very first year we had opened up NCI. We were doing the level 1. There's a ton of stress that comes with that. Anybody that knows my background knows I had an eating disorder. I had battles with HPA axis dysfunction. And so I'm very prone to these things continuing to show their head. And when you're putting yourself in a severe calorie deficit and you're setting up your life with a lot of stressors, it's a recipe for disaster. And so year one, it was disaster. We went and we delivered the level 1 in Chicago. And then I don't think I got out of bed for a week. And to be honest, full transparency, I've never really discussed it. I was embarrassed. And I kind of disappeared from the internet for a while because I'm oh my God, I don't know what to tell people. I'm supposed to be leading and this is a terrible leadership, until I finally pulled my head out of my ass and was no, this is a great chance to lead and explain to people the rights and the wrongs of this. And so that was really good. Last year I just personally chose to opt out. I looked at it and I said, my life is not in the right spot for me to be doing this. I have not done the requisite off season and preseason to set myself up for this. And so I knew just as an individual, it was not the right idea. Now going into this year, I had taken the time to eat enough. I had taken the time to de-stress and control those variables. And I was in a very good position to begin a diet phase. And so I had every intention of doing it, but the first 4 weeks were pretty nuts. Week 1 was awesome. I vividly remember I lost 7 pounds. Obviously, guys, that's water weight. Full transparency. 2 days before the start of it. I think I had pizza like the night before. I had like a burger and fries. So there was definitely some water weight sitting around. And, you know, but I lost weight. I was on track. I felt really good. And I said, you know, I'm going to live by, you know, patience is really going to be like my moniker for this diet, because I have that tendency to come out of the gate hot. And then week number 2, you started to see stress show itself in my life. Like I ended up in the hospital during week number 2. Now, completely unrelated, you know, immune system stuff, but you could see stress was already showing itself in my life, even from a mild calorie deficit, even from this being a stressor. And I was like, no worries. I pushed through. I kept going. Then like travel came up and real life started happening. You know, we started to get booked more, and I had family things pop up. You know, the health of my father popped up, personal life things popped up, and I started having to deal with those while maintaining a calorie deficit, while traveling all around the country. And I said, you know what, I'm committed, I'm going to make it work. And I got to tell you, like I was super committed, and I made it work. Like I drove across the country from Scottsdale, Arizona to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and I stayed true to my macros every single day. Got my workouts in, got the cardio in, got like every single thing in that I needed to do. But I also started to notice in that time that like my mind was wandering. Like I wasn't as committed to the things that I needed to be committed to. And I found myself wanting to prioritize anything but my own personal self. And I know from history, that is the first telltale sign. Like I had to be mature and recognize that. And I said, okay, do I push through? Do I not? And I actually consulted a lot of friends because, you know, this was year number 3, and I was like, I'm not going to embarrass myself. And really that was the battle. That was the biggest battle internally was, oh my gosh, I said, I'm going to finish it. I felt like I was doing a great job. You know, I was down like 13, 14 pounds. Like I'm in a really good place. Why not just suck it up and grind through? Because clearly I'm capable of it. Like I've done a lot of grinding in my life. And, you know, you start to realize that your physical, like, you know, your physical shit, like your physical self, just, it's not everything. And it's not a lot of things, to be totally honest. And like you said, you know, people starting diets, it brings back thoughts or things from earlier in life. And I started to find myself with similar thoughts as to when I was in anorexia, as to when I've had eating issues, when I've had body image issues, when I've had social isolation issues, the things that come from eating issues. And I started to recognize them, which I think shows a lot about personal maturity in the journey. But that recognition is not enough. You have to have action on top of the recognition. Because I think that a lot of people that do have issues that emphasize the frame component of the 3-dimensional model too much, they have recognition. And it's not just about recognition, because a lot of people that see this video are gonna recognize they've been there. The real key is in having action, but then having support inside of that action. And I have some amazing friends that were, you know, like Michael that runs the inner circle for our company. He was there. He's like, dude, pump the brakes, like shut it down. Amanda that coaches me, she's like, pump the brakes, shut it down. You know, all of those things. So yeah, that's kind of what brought us there. Like that's kind of the story. And I know we can go deeper in any of that, but that's really like the thought process that went on behind my head.
So from a mindset perspective, because we see this all the time with clients, how did they start to find, you know, where they cross the line? Because dieting in general, not the most fun part for a lot of people of a nutritional protocol. And it requires more diligence, and it requires them to be much more dialed in. People feel hungry. They don't feel, you know, like they have as much freedom from food and quality of life. But that's different than a more extreme version where all of a sudden old obsessive thoughts are being triggered. They're seeing significant changes in their biofeedback versus just the normal like energy lulls, training being down. So, you know, where is that line in your mind, even from a mindset perspective of this is just the not fun part of dieting, but I'm committed, I need to keep going, versus, whoa, I don't need to keep grinding through this because it's not what's best for me long-term?
Yeah, I think that, I think you have to be, one of the, like we talk about periodization all the time. And one of the big things that we talk about in preseason is setting up the expectations of the diet. Now, I've dieted before. I lived in the fitness world for quite some time. And I recognize energy lulls are going to come, food cravings are going to come, strength decrements are going to occur. I get that. I think you have to be able to decipher when it's really negatively affecting the other areas. Like, when is it negatively affecting connection? When is it negatively affecting your ability to produce output inside of your job? And where are your priorities there, right? Because there are some people that will come in and say, I'm totally okay with losing production in my job. And if you're okay with that, it's not my job as a coach to tell you otherwise.
Right.
If you're totally okay with losing connection with your significant other, or your family or your friends, I'm not one to judge. Do I think it's healthy? No. And I will blatantly tell you that. But at the end of the day, it's your decision.
Right.
But what started to happen is those things started to happen, right? Like, my father's health became a priority, and my ability to go home and take care of him and do these things was being affected by my dietary endeavor. My ability to show up and be the leader that I need to be in my own business was being affected by my dietary endeavors. Now, I'm not okay with losing those things. And I also don't believe that the pursuit of an extreme in the physical realm was worth sacrificing those things. Now, if I was simply trying to get healthy inside my body, maybe we'd have a difference. But I was literally trying to take it to that last 10%. I don't walk around overweight. I don't walk around out of shape. I take reasonably good care of myself. Aside from recovery, we all know I don't sleep enough. Clearly I didn't sleep much last night. So, but those are the things that I think we have to consider. How are the other dimensions being affected by your dietary pursuits?
Right. But I think that's why it's so important that people, we kind of talk, and it's become a little bit of a catchphrase, but we talk a lot about what's your why and being clear in your goals. But this is really it, is being able to be very clear. And I want to enter a fat loss phase, and I want to see what I'm capable of, but not if it means losing X, Y, and Z in my life, and understanding the role that it plays. For individuals with mindset, one thing I see a lot is the role ego can tend to play in their diet as well. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We all have it. And it's not just vanity. It's the desire to push more, the desire to follow through with a commitment. You said kind of you're feeling this embarrassment of having to say, I can't do it for the third year in a row. And a lot of that isn't just ego for you. It's being able to show up for a team and family and stuff like that too. But I do think that a lot of clients get into trouble with injuries. They get into trouble with diet phases because their ego wins, and they don't listen to the other signals that are like, we need to change course here. So what is your thought on the mindset?
It's funny you say that, because as somebody that's been to the pinnacle on the dietary side, right? I had a cover of a magazine at one point in my life. And that was my crowning achievement. I really was super excited about it. I set out and I was like, I want to be on the cover of a magazine, and I made it happen. So now I scroll through Instagram and I see these other guys that I used to be in the industry with, and they're still doing these things, right? Instantly in my head, and I today at 34 years old, almost 35 years old, right? I still look at those things and I'm like, oh, I could do that. I should do that. And I almost view it as a competition. And absolutely, ego is the right word. It is 1,000,000% ego driven. And you have to kind of take a step back and look at yourself, and it's why? Why does that matter? And I look back and I look at myself then, and the why behind me wanting the magazine covers back then is actually what drove me into all the problems. And so if I'm not able to connect to the why today, then I'm going to go right back to all of those problems. And that's an issue, right? And I think a lot of people that undertake dietary endeavors that are vanity driven or ego driven, when you start to ask why, you start to recognize it's this lack of self-acceptance. It's this, I need to be better so that I'm accepted. You're pandering to the opinions of others. And, you know, Gary Vee says it all the time. And I really believe that the single biggest killer of so many people is their reliance upon the opinions of others. And I know for me, that was my biggest killer. Like, I mean, I've openly discussed what led me into like the anorexia, like the desire to be accepted by other guys, the desire to have girls look at me, like all of these things. Like 100%, it was vanity, ego driven. And so I think that if you ask yourself, like, why am I willing to do these absurd things? Like, because on the surface level, like if you go to anybody on the street and you're like, hey, I'm going to give you this dietary protocol and it's going to make you feel like shit and you're not going to want to talk to anybody and you're only going to be able to eat certain types of foods. And like you give them like this laundry and they're like, fuck you, no, right? But then yet they put themselves in these scenarios without like thinking of it rationally. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? Right. Yeah. And so I think that that's a really good, it's a really good observation. And, you know, I think that as I continue to mature in my dietary journeys, I'm starting to see more of it.
Right. Well, and with that also comes like one thing that I talk about all the time with my clients who want to diet is that I truly believe real success comes when we start from a place of self-love and not a need to fix. But I think what a lot of people don't recognize is that that doesn't always mean true success and that you're going to lose the 30 pounds you always wanted to lose. Sometimes that success also comes in having the self-awareness to say, I don't want this as bad as I thought, or I don't want to sacrifice things that I thought I was willing to sacrifice, or, you know what, I actually love myself with 10 pounds down instead of 20. I don't feel the need, or I loved myself before the 10 pounds down. Like the extra 10 pounds is just nice, but I don't feel the need to have that validation anymore. And so I think, you know, ego also can play a role, but like you were talking about understanding your past and finally getting to a place where you had enough self-esteem and had self-awareness of where you were also allowed you to not keep going just because.
I think that's a really good statement. And I think it's one that so many people will miss, but I want to triple down on that statement. There was enough self-esteem and enough self-awareness. You know, I lead a multi-million-dollar company, and it was crazy to say that as a leader, we lack self-esteem at times, but I'm going to be fully transparent. I do. Mm-hmm. And I'm more proud of this decision fully based on the self-esteem decision than I am on anything else. I was in a position where I was ready to say, fuck all the judgment. Anybody that judges me, that's okay. Like, that's on you. And that's super cool. I respect you. I love you anyway. I'm super cool with looking at myself in the mirror and not getting super shredded and not comparing myself to the people on Instagram. And I'm super cool that this was the right decision for my journey, to give to the people in my life that matter, to give to my team. And it, like, that's, for me, that shows how far I've come as a person. And I know that the further I get as a person, the better I can serve the people that I'm trying to serve. Right. And I think that that statement, I hope that it connects to so many people, because I think so many people are dieting to cover up self-esteem and self-insecurity issues, because I know for the better part of 34 years I did.
Right. Well, and it becomes a very, you know, black and white thinking. We talk a lot about like errors in thinking and distortions we have. You and I did the Thursday Thoughts, and we talked a lot about, you know, where to invest your energy and what to actually focus on. And one of the main things that we talked about was adding, you know, I did that to the end of every statement. And I mean, we both think that extreme ownership is powerful, but I also think it's really important that not be misconstrued with the fact that everything is very black and white. Like, yes, there are times to take ownership. I mean, with shredding season, you are taking ownership, but sometimes it's not just that you did anything wrong. It's that things came up, other priorities came up. There was a history of dieting and a history of different thoughts around yourself that came up. And sometimes we're able to say, I did that, and take ownership and move on. But sometimes it's more complicated than that, because life has a lot of gray area as well. And so I think that it's allowing people to recognize, if you enter into a diet, it might look different than you anticipated, or it might not be quite as extreme or quite as black and white, but there is room for that gray area in between.
Can I also say too, like, I believe that the 4.5 weeks I spent in shredding season has now carried over positively still into my life, because I'm still making very similar choices as to what I was making then. I'm just not stressing over details. Like, for instance, this past weekend we were at the level 2. On Friday night, I ate at, one of my good friends like owns a restaurant in Scottsdale, and I ate there, and they have a chicken parm dish that I absolutely love. And I ate it, and I had a drink, and I didn't think anything of it. And Saturday night, we took a group of people out to Mastro's, and I ate it, and I didn't think anything of it. But that being said, yesterday I was right back on super clean food. Today I'm right back on, I'm not tracking macros, but I'm eating very similar things. And like, I believe that the habits have carried over, and like the awareness. And so, there's not this all or nothing mentality. And I think that's another positive. I think a lot of people view it as, oh, you shut down shredding season, so you just go back to just eating complete shit and it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, like I felt fantastic, right? Until we started pushing the deficit a little bit larger. But I felt really good. And it's like, well, why wouldn't I want those positives in my life? So I think it's not as black and white as people want it to be. And I think that, you're always taking the positives of every phase. And honestly, I think this whole journey, like, we position as, oh my God, like we're shutting it down. So sad. Like, I'm really happy because there's so much learning. And as we go through this, like I look at it, there's so much personal growth and the maturity that comes with that. And any future endeavors that I want to diet for, I'm going to be in a great place because I didn't hurt myself. Right? I am in no way, like last night I slept very little, right? I just did 4-day Impact Collective, which is, our former mastermind. Then I literally traveled across the country. I drove 9 hours. I flew again. I delivered the level 2 for 2 days. And here I am showing up, not sick, not like laying in bed for 5 days, like ability to get up. Like now, obviously I'm taking today a lot slower because I should be, but I'm able to continue on with my life. And those are things I couldn't do in the past. And so it shows that fundamentally I am dieting correctly, right? And a lot of people will miss that because I'm not dieting for aesthetics. I'm dieting correctly for what my life demands.
Right. Well, and they miss the fact that this, even if you had done shredding season the whole 12 weeks, this was never designed to be some 30-day challenge where you have to show up and be perfect for 30 days. And then at the end of it, you go back to doing whatever unhealthy choices somebody's doing, or they failed if they don't hit their goal or whatever. I know for me, my goal as a coach is typically even less than just, I want to get you to this goal weight or I want to get you to the end of the road. It's more, how can we create building blocks upon which to build upon? So that way, should the time come that you can't be as dialed in or we have to change course faster than anticipated, we can still take the pieces from the prior phase and build upon it, which is what shredding season allowed you to do. It allowed you to say, here's areas that I could have cleaned stuff up a little bit. Here's how I can carry that over. But stress was too great for me to really keep going.
And I think it just, again, like I'm going to give props to Amanda Borelli, who coaches me and had the wherewithal to tell me to pump the brakes and same to you, because I consulted you a little bit on it. And like, it takes some really positive influences in your life to tell you like, hey, you got to shut it down and you got to look out for you. And I think that it was super conflicted, like, being super honest, like I was very conflicted on it. And, because again, in all fairness, I was pandering to the opinions of others, right? Like my biggest fear in shutting it down was, oh my God, what are other people going to think? And that's so asinine to say today, right? Like we say it and we're like, oh my God, like Jason, that's so dumb. But like, in the moment, it's not dumb. Like it's a very real feeling and a lot of people can relate to those feelings. And so, I think it really takes a lot of maturity to put diet into context. And I've always said there's one rule in diets, like period, the end. And that one rule is that context is king.
Right.
Like that's it. Like that's all we can blanket say. And we just taught a course this weekend on how other people should coach diets. And I'm like, here I am saying, well, there's only one rule. Like we could have been done with the course in 5 minutes, but it's that's just how it works out. And I think that's what the best coaches understand. And here I am, and I like to think of myself as a very good coach. I like to think of myself as somebody that has led the industry for a while. And here I am telling you that I fuck it up too. And that's okay. And we're always going to fuck it up.
Right. Well, and we're all human. I mean, I think that's what leads us to want to be coaches, to want to be better coaches, to connect with clients, and for clients to understand that, things like saying I was pandering to what others thought of me. I feel like that's one thing that we as humans all have in common that nobody really wants to talk about, because we want to be immune from other people's thoughts of us. But I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. I think it governs a lot of their decisions. And I think it circles back to one common theme that we've talked about a lot, which is stress. Spending our time caring about what other people think, doing things that don't serve us, but we think that it serves other people, does nothing but add more and more stress to ourselves. And stress is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I think it's like one of the most underestimated pieces that can really impact overall success. And I think what a lot of people forget is that a stressed body isn't typically a responsive body, and that the process of dieting itself is really stressful. So, I mean, I want to hear from you the role that you think stress really played as well.
Oh my goodness. I mean, where does stress not play a role in my life? And I mean, I think I kind of talked about it like a little bit, like, first of all, what people don't understand is a calorie deficit in and of itself is a stressor. And I think a lot of people miss that. And like I talked about, I got sick, that second week, and I ended up in the hospital. Now, do I believe that was from being in a calorie deficit? No. Do I believe that a calorie deficit contributed to it? Absolutely. And there's plenty of other life stressors in my life at the time, and I just think that was icing on the cake. But it will absolutely exacerbate anything that's underlying at the moment. And that definitely happened.
I think it's an important thing to talk about too, because I don't think that a lot of people realize stress is stress. And
Yes.
People will be like, well, I stopped CrossFitting and I started bodybuilding, so I'm ready for a diet. And I'm like, okay, but we haven't even touched upon your work stress, your personal life stress, lack of sleep that you're getting, interpersonal issues going on. And I think that we feel like, well, we changed up that 1 hour max a day that we're training, so now we're less stressed and we can diet. And then we enter into something like shredding season, and it's like, oh man, like everything is now impacted.
Yeah, I think that an accumulation of stress obviously has to be considered as well.
Right. So what does it look like mindset wise? I mean, we preach periodization. We talked about stress management, the role stress plays. We talked about, what led you here, what caused you to push the brakes, how that can translate over for other people of understanding how they need to advocate for themselves as well. But we talk a lot about periodization. So what does it look like for you in the future with diets, with the next phase? What's on the horizon for you?
So the first thing for me was, it's funny, we talk about stress. The big thing was reducing stress, and, not having to wake up and weigh in, and not having to wake up and wonder, like, is the mirror getting better? Like that was a big stressor off my plate. Not wondering what other people are going to think about the journey. That was a big stressor off my plate. And now it's, I don't think that I was in a diet super long, so I don't think there's like a massive postseason that's needed. I'm not recovering hormone levels or anything like that. So I am actively bringing my calories up. I'm doing it through periodic overfeeds versus eating more every day. I'm not somebody that likes to eat a lot in a day. So I am bringing weekly calories up versus with periodic overfeeds, sometimes done with cheat meals, sometimes done with high carb days, whatever works in my life at that moment. Actually my personal transition right now is, I'm calling it the golf body. So one of the things I believe everybody should do in their life is something that they absolutely love. And one of the things that's been missing in my life the last 4 to 5 years is playing more golf. You guys all know I played on tour for 1.5 years, and it was a big part of my life. I spend a ton of time watching Golf Channel and like doing things like that because I just love the sport. I love being around it. I've been very fortunate to actually advise a new golf nutrition company. And it just really reignited my passion. And so I started making it out on the course once a week. Now I'm getting out like 2-3 times a week. And so I have a strength coach that is literally programming golf specific stuff for me, which is mobility and, power. And so it's very fun for me again. And so I feel like I'm transitioning back to just trying to find balance, which is, I guess would be defined as like post season, off season.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as the intensity of the workouts creeps back up, we'll enter preseason. I'll begin like fueling and recovering from those. And then I will let him know when I'm ready to fully undertake a program, become very committed to it. I am simply looking for balance across the board right now. I'm not looking for maximal commitment in any one area outside of my personal life, obviously. That's my priority, that and my business. And so, yeah, like that's where it looks. And to be super honest, like the lack of opinions or lack of caring about opinions is carried over into this. And I feel like it's been the most freeing thing. And I feel like it's allowed me to operate with freedom inside of my diet. One thing a lot of people see me talking about is like the notion of like last diet ever. And that's actually where a lot of this came from, is like, what would be involved if I never got to manipulate anything in my diet ever again? Like, how would I operate? And that's kind of how I view my life, is like, I need to be including all of the things that I never want to pull out again. And I'm super excited to just be tinkering with that and playing around with it and perfecting it. And, yeah, like it's excitement. I think that's the word, is there's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of fun. I don't feel obligated. I feel like I'm living, and I think that is the best thing.
Well, I think that there's some powerful mindset pieces that you're experiencing now too, by taking a step back from stress and from restriction, of doing things that you find fulfilling, of finding things that empower you and that make you feel creative and make you feel excited. And then also being able to find some freedom from food again and kind of challenging any food triggers or food rules that might have popped up. And I think that that's such an important lesson, that there's a carryover for any clients who are listening, of just recognizing sometimes these things happen in diets, and it's your opportunity to advocate for yourself. And it's your opportunity to know there is a whole life outside of dieting, and a whole level of self-love and self-awareness that can come from that too. And that doesn't mean you never diet. A lot of people are still continuing with their diets and they're crushing it and they're in a great position to do so. But it's also recognizing that there's a lot of other elements that maybe can become the priority again, by focusing on mindset just as much as macros and taking calories down too.
If anything, I think that and I'll say this, right, and I don't make blanket statements at all, but I'll make a blanket statement now. If you as a client or you as a coach, whoever you are watching this video, are not leading with mindset, you're doing yourself or your clients a disservice, like 1,000,000%. And like, full transparency, as the person that opened NCI, when I went out to Jess, I said, we need a mindset course. Like, I didn't know if there's demand for it. I really didn't care, because at the end of the day, we know what is needed. And if you're a coach and you haven't gone down the mindset rabbit hole, like, you're losing 1,000,000%. The reason that we have such an amazing team is because we all have access to Jess, and she teaches us about this stuff. Like, I continue to learn from her on a day-to-day basis. But these are the things that really move us forward. And if you're not leading with mindset, you're failing. And I think that as you listen to me talk about my journey, all of the real changes were just awareness changes. It was in my head. It was all in my head. Like, there was nothing physical. Like, I didn't stop the diet and like instantly the next day I woke up with more energy. Like, I stopped the diet and like just everything got more clear. And that's all mindset. And even the ability to start the diet and stop the diet was all mindset. So I absolutely agree, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're a perfect practical example of that, because I think that for clients, they need to understand that even we as coaches and leaders, like, sometimes we put mindset on the back burner and have to pull it back forward all over again. But I also think that it's important as coaches, all of the other nutrition stuff is super sexy, and you've got clients coming to you and they want to lose weight or they want to lift more. And so it's easy to not prioritize understanding mindset as coaches too. But 99.9% of clients are going to hit some sort of a roadblock or see some sort of detriment to their phase like you did. And it's our responsibility as coaches to know how to work with those issues. And it's also our responsibility to empower our clients to be able to speak up like you did and say, like, this isn't what I want anymore, and here's why, and here's what I want instead. So I appreciate
to also understand there's a journey beyond not dieting for aesthetics. Right. Like you said, like, you ask a really important question: what does it entail now for me? that's just as important as when I was dieting for aesthetics. Like there's no like lack of importance today. If anything, I would argue it's more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people put aesthetics like way up top on their priorities, not realizing that is just a piece of it.
Agreed.
And there's so many things that the really good stuff of life, in my opinion, exists outside of a diet.
Absolutely. I can tell you life is way more fun today than it was 3 weeks ago.
I bet. Well, and I just appreciate you coming on and talking about it, because I think it was important for you to be able to share, your story of shredding season and where you're at. I think like a lot of my clients are going to benefit from just understanding, first of all, they're not so alone in some of the challenges. For the clients who weren't in a position to partake in shredding season, here's why you were in a position and you still had to be able to like pump the brakes a little bit. But also for other coaches to understand, like, this is why mindset matters. And here are some of the things that we have to learn how to navigate, because at the end of the day, everybody being healthy and being really clear in who they are and what helps them with self-esteem is really what matters most.
Yeah. I mean, we always say like lead from the front. And I think that those of us that are coaches really have to take that to heart. And I think that, it was difficult, but I think it was a fantastic learning experience for myself. I'm super grateful to have somebody like you on the team and in my corner. And I think that all the clients and coaches out there need to really begin accepting that part of it. And so I'm excited for this message to get to the world. I'm excited for coaches and clients to see this video. And I hope there's a lot of connection that is built. I hope people are able to connect the dots. I hope that my vulnerability and my journey can be used to pay it forward. And, if it helps one person, then we did our job today and we did our job the last several months. And that's exciting to me. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I always love the opportunity to chat about it. And I'm just excited for the message to get out to everyone else.
You and me both. So guys, if you have questions about this, please just leave them on our social media, on Jess's social media, on mine, on IN3, on NCI, anywhere you guys find us, ask questions. I know, I speak for both of us when I say we're both very passionate about this topic. We're both very open to talking about it, helping you through your own journey. I think this is really what separates us from other coaching entities out there, is we really do recognize this, care about it, and implement with it. So guys, if you have questions, please reach out. Leave them below here. If this is on YouTube, whatever, we will get back to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for listening to and being a part of it.
Awesome. Bye guys.
All right. Bye.